Jora's Artist Talk. I'm Professor Grasha Brown. I'm here with the art department and I'm also the gallery director. Jora grew up in Hillsborough, North Dakota, and I feel like most of you know that. Right? And she graduates this December with a major in art education and a minor in digital design. Jora speaks often of this. She has loved art for as long as she can remember. And my favorite story is when she talks about like crafting paper towel clothes for her Polly Pockets as a small child. So that was where it all began. So thank you, Polly Pockets. But her journey continued throughout high school. She expanded her artistic skills in classes. She has always found great joy in the process of exploring materials, and she looks forward to mentoring others in their creative journey as an art teacher. So now, Jora will discuss her capstone project, Bloom.
So hello everyone, my name is Jora Leeseberg, and this is my senior capstone exhibit, Bloom. So first we're going to get into what led me here to BCSU and a little bit more about my time here. So like Rasha mentioned, I grew up in Hillsborough, North Dakota. For as long as I can remember, I have always been interested in art. It has been something that I've really enjoyed, and I've always been known to be creating things, but I really started to branch out once I was in high school. While there, I was able to take a variety of classes like ceramics, photography, painting, and more. This started my love of discovering new art mediums and trying new things. The picture on the bottom left is me at my art exhibit my senior year of high school. Around this time is when I decided that I wanted to pursue a degree in art education. I wanted to be the person that exposing students to different types of art and helping them find the kind they enjoy. I love helping people figure out how to make the ideas that are in their head and wanted to be someone who encourages my students to not be afraid of failure. Once I knew what I wanted to do, I had to find a place to pursue this passion. I chose Valley City State University because of how close it was to home, the small class sizes, and the tight-knit community. Once I got to BCSU, I found my place quickly. Throughout my time here, I was able to be a part of things like residence life, band, crew, and other things that really helped me find a community here. Luckily for me, there were other art ed students who were on the same education track as me, so we were in a ton of classes together. We created this little group, and it was so much fun getting to take all of the studio classes with them. We were able to encourage each other, give feedback, and support each other's growth. They truly made my time here at BCSU so special, and I could not have done it without them. Next, I'll get into one of the main influences that inspired my love of textiles. So there were a lot of artists who influenced my work, but Debbie Kaufman is the artist who really inspired me to dive deeper into textile work. Debbie is a North Dakota artist who creates art using thread. I was first introduced to her work through her exhibit Polymer Skies here at BCSU. This series changed how I viewed textile art and sparked a curiosity in me to learn more about this kind of art. The unique thing about her work is that she created the background colors by layering plastics that she found and recycled and then stitched on top of it. Her work showed me that textiles could be used in unique and creative ways, and this started me down a path of exploration. Through this exploration of textiles, I discovered a love I have for them and crafting work with repetitive motions. I find this type of artwork extremely relaxing, and I love just getting lost in the motion of creating. Next, I'm going to be going over some of my past works that prepared me for Bloom. The first artwork I'm going to talk about is my relief print I did of my cat, Mr. Tinkles. Relief printing is when you cut out the design out of a block. You can think of it like a stamp, but with a design that I cut out myself. This print taught me how to use the tools in a controlled manner and methods for aligning my stamp with the paper. Through this project, I worked with how to display texture and negative space through my work. When carving a stamp, it takes a different way of thinking because everything that I cut away will show up white when ink is applied. I had to think about how I wanted to display his fur patterns and how I could use the negative white space to show texture and movement. The next piece is Peeking Through the Clouds, a large-scale acrylic painting. This piece helped me break loose from the feeling I had of wanting to follow my reference image exactly. Through this work, I let myself have freedom in composition, brush strokes, and color. I started painting what I felt like and gave myself the freedom to actually create. It was around this time that I really started to let myself play with color and letting things have a blended look and also having a textured look. You can see throughout the top there's a blended look of the clouds, but towards the bottom I have very clear brush strokes. This was also one of the first times working in a large size. It brought me out of my comfort zone and pushed me as an artist. The last piece I'm going to talk about is my 3D sculpture, Colorful Dreams. This was my first introduction to yarn painting, which is something I expand upon more in my show. This piece allowed me to combine different art mediums together in an abstract way and gave me a better understanding on how to construct 3D shapes. In this piece, I got to just have fun and play around with color and patterns. So this brings me to the show that is currently in the gallery, Bloom. Bloom is a culmination of my love to create and my artistic exploration. I chose a floral theme to symbolize how I have grown as an artist and the connection I have with my family. Flowers to me have symbolized this idea of growth and growing as a person, but on a deeper level, they are the symbol of my mom and have always been something that makes me feel closer to her. While in Hillsborough, we moved houses a few times, and I have fond memories of my mom bringing her irises and daffodils to each house. Even though we don't live at those houses anymore, it's fun to still see them planted outside each one, and is something that I hope to bring to my future home someday. Even though this isn't flowers, my family has always been known for gardening and planting potatoes at our home in Minnesota. It's something that, even though I wasn't always the most helpful with as a kid, I got to spend time with my family outside gardening and eating the delicious potatoes, which I always think of when I think of them. We also connect through my time sitting outside in her home garden. I got to see her tending to something that she cares about and see all the time she puts into it. Because of her love for flowers, I have found myself often creating floral-themed gifts and artworks to give to her. Creating gifts for my family is what sparked a love I have for giving homemade gifts to the people I love. Not only do flowers help show the connection with my family, they are also a representation of the growth I have had here while at BCSU. This brings me to the first piece of artwork I'm going to talk about, my yarn painting. The artist that inspired these paintings is Shelley Burkholz. She is a Canadian artist who is inspired by nature's stunning beauty. The pieces she makes are made entirely out of yarn, and I love how she uses repetition in her artwork. You can see it in how she lays down the yarn. This repetition creates movement and harmony throughout the piece. This is something that I thought a lot about when creating my own yarn paintings. I was able to learn so much about yarn painting through watching her process and brought some of the techniques that she uses into my own pieces. The first step of my process was finding reference images. This summer, I took pictures of flowers at the International Peace Gardens, and I found that I was drawn to all the beautiful colors of the lupine flowers as well as the repetition of the petals. Once I chose my photo, the next step was choosing yarn. I wanted colors that worked well together but also provided high contrast. I first did a rough sketch of the flower on the wood, and then I kind of just went for it. I started with constructing the flower first because I found that it was easier to create the designs around it versus doing the greenery first. When choosing where to put certain colors, I did roughly reference my image to see where things like shadows, highlights, and the horizon line were. For the top part, I wanted to use rounder forms and swirls to reference the roundness of trees and to give this look of wind blowing through them. I felt it contrasted well with the sharp, chaotic form that I created for the grass. I wanted to capture the overlapping look of the grass and chose light colors to show that it was separate from the trees. Now this is a video of my process and how I go about laying down the yarn. So the first step was applying tacky glue to the wood and spreading it out with a palette knife. Now I had to work fairly quickly because the glue dried in a relatively quick manner, especially around the edges. So once I had the glue down, I put together some colors that I thought would work well together and cut roughly how long I think that the shape should be. And once I had that cut, I laid it down on the glue and used my fingers and a pencil to kind of push it in so that there was no gaps in between and the wood wouldn't be showing. And then any excess I just cut off with scissors. And I continue this pattern throughout all of this piece, moving on to the next area that I wanted to create. As I was going about this, I did not have any idea of what it would look like before laying down the yarn. I really just went for it, as I don't plan much when creating my art. I kind of just go with whatever I feel at the time. The nice thing about the glue is that it was really easy to take any of the yarn off before it dried if I wanted to change something and play around with different compositions. And I think that was one thing that I really enjoyed about this process, was that I was able to play around with it so much and put just whatever I felt at the time. I've also been told that this process is very satisfying to look at, and I do have to agree watching the video back. And this brings me to my final piece. I really enjoyed creating this artwork. The creation of it connected with this overall idea that I found textile work very soothing. I liked the repetitive motions that are often used in this field of art, and I love how I was able to let my curiosity loose when creating it. I was able to really explore who I was as an artist and work with materials in a way, in a unique way. Just like how flowers change, I was able to transform the yarn into something that most people wouldn't think about when you mention yarn art. This brings me to my next piece of work I'm going to talk about, which is my embroidery. The artist that I got a lot of inspiration and techniques from when creating this piece is Winnie Wen. I love the texture she was able to get in her embroidery work and the way she layered the thread. I was inspired a lot by the way she created her grass and used that layering technique in my own piece. When creating the grass, she builds up colors by stitching a lot of small lines across, leaving a little room in some places. You want to go about it in an almost random way, but in a way that doesn't look too uniform. By layering the lighter greens on top of darker, you create beautiful highlights in the grass and bring dimension to the piece. I decided that I wanted to create this brick cottage surrounded by a flower garden. So I first started with the building. Throughout this work, I feel that the building really set the precedent of this look of pattern and repetition that you can see throughout the rest of the flower garden. I incorporated felt with my embroidery because I thought it created a really good contrast and put these cool negative spaces and brought uniformity to my piece. The next step was adding trees at the top of the building and starting to fill out the greenery in front of the cottage. You can see how I used the grass technique I talked about in Winnie's work throughout it. I continued that grass all along the piece. For the grass that was farther away, I used less strands of thread. I felt the thinner grass blades gave the look of it being farther away. I colored the canvas with marker to decrease the amount you could see the canvas through the stitches. And I started to fill out the flowers, and I had to research different types of stitches to get the variation in flowers that I wanted. You will notice that there is a bush-shaped color in the back. At the very end, and I mean very end, I changed my mind, and I had to use a lot of rubbing alcohol to get it out. It almost did not come out, and it was touch and go there for a little bit, but after a few sessions of applying rubbing alcohol, dabbing it with a paper towel, and then drying it under the hand dryer in the bathroom, it came out. And then this is the final piece, named Flower Gardens. This piece is the embodiment of what I feel when I think about my mom's home garden. This is not what the garden actually looks like. This is just a representation of the peaceful feeling the garden brings me and the atmosphere it creates. Looking at this artwork, I can practically hear the sounds of running water, wind blowing through the trees, and the smell of summer. While creating this piece, I also got to connect with my mom because she does embroidery as well. I got to get feedback from her and talk about the different techniques I was using. And now this brings me to the last piece I'm going to talk about, which is my iris seed packets. Grace Wan is the artist that I got inspiration from when creating the design for my prints. I was drawn to her use of line work, solid colors, and simple forms. I enjoyed how she balanced simplicity with detail and the textures she brought out within her flowers. I was inspired to make my own paper for the seed packets out of recycled paper that I found here at the CFA. I was curious about this process and wanted to learn more about it. I was lucky enough to have some help from friends because it is a very long process, especially when you're making 125 sheets of paper. I added essential oils into the mixture because I wanted the paper to smell like nature. The smell did get a little hidden after applying the ink, but you can really smell it on the blank pieces of paper. You could also really smell it in the studio because the room smelled like essential oils for weeks afterwards from the sheer amount that I put in the mixture. I also sprayed it with water and essential oil mix and then ironed the paper to make it flat because it dried with a lot of creases in it, so that also added to the smell. The next part of the design, I took inspiration from Grace when coming up with. I first made a digital mock-up of what I wanted the design to look like using a photo of an iris I took. Next, I put that image into Procreate and simplified the design. Then I printed it out and traced it onto my block. After that, I cut out the block and it was ready to be printed. I inked the block using an oil-based paint. I thought this type of ink really made the colors pop. At this time is when I also decided to mix a variation of 5 different purples. I felt that it created a lot of beautiful contrast in the work and made it more interesting to look at. This is how the final seed packets turned out. Making them seed packets represented this idea of how I enjoy sharing my art with others and planting these seeds of ideas to inspire them to create their own work. It was symbolic of the idea that I love sharing my art with others and encouraging them to make their own artwork. This brings me to the end, which is my final plans, or future plans. So my plan is to student teach in the fall in either like the Fargo or Bismarck area, and then once I graduate in December, I want to become an art teacher somewhere in the Midwest. I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for coming down and supporting me and listening to my talk, either here or online. Thank you so much. I also have a special thanks for my professors, friends, and family. I could not have done this without all the support that you guys have given me and all the love. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being there for me. Now this brings me to the last part of my talk, questions. Yeah.
Which of the different processes did you enjoy doing the most?
I think it's between 2 because I really love to crochet, so I really enjoyed crocheting the tapestry, but I also had so much fun doing the yarn painting, so it's between either of them because like I said, it was very satisfying to do the yarn painting and I enjoyed getting to spread out the glue and just really layering the yarn.
What medium do you want to try after BCSU?
That's a good question. One thing that I've always wanted to try is glass blowing because when I was younger, I got to see Chihuli's artwork and I always thought it was such a cool process and one thing I'd like to try someday. Yeah.
Would you do any of these projects with your future students?
I think I would do most of these projects with my future students, especially bringing yarn painting because I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about or haven't been exposed to, and I think it's a great way to really promote layering and texture within your work.
Are you hoping to travel outside the Midwest?
Yeah, I think I would like to. I really like Rapid City area in like South Dakota and like the Black Hills, so maybe looking at places over there. But I'd really like to go somewhere in a bigger city so I can experience living somewhere different.